My longtime viewer might remember the orrery that I made about a year ago. You'll remember that it didn't quite work correctly, so we're going to try to rebuild it and make an accurate model of how planets spin around a star. It's time for Aaron Does It Wrong in support of Casey Hudson at WorldWorkings.com. In order to rebuild this, I'll have to take the orrery apart. I'll snap the works off the base and then remove the star and planet swing arms. Then I'll take the gearing apart as well, but I'm going to save it and reuse it in the new orrery. Since I now have a bare axis pole, I'll need to attach a base for the gearing to sit on. I want to use these swing arms from an orrery set that I took apart to hold my planets, but I'll need to cut a notch to attach the swing arms. These will hold the planets. We need a gear cassette on top. This will move the transition gears between the first and second planets of the orrery. This is how the planet gear fits into the axis pole. It spins freely around the axis pole. This will need to be secured from the top to prevent the gears from wobbling. I'll use the inner ring from a smaller gear to hold it in place. I'll make the transition gears by cutting a small piece from a dowel and gluing a stack of gears to it. I have these metal pieces from a robot and I want to use them. I'll need to make this hole larger to fit over the axis pole. I made this gear off camera, but it's important that your gears be centered. I used toothpicks to make sure my gear was centered, and I can cut the excess off with my small saw. This will fit off the side of the axis pole and spin nicely. I'll need to find a way to attach this transition gear to the axis. I'll drill a hole through this craft stick and attach a metal bar. I'll superglue this piece to the main axis. Now I'll work on the second planet. This will only be a 2-planet orrery because, in reality, it won't work anyway, for reasons I'll go into later. I'll assemble the second swing arm the same way I assembled the first. I'll need to drill a slightly larger hole to attach this gear to the base arm. I'll mesh 2 of these gears together. In order for these gears to spin freely, they'll have to be sandwiched between craft sticks. I'll match them exactly so that the holes are the same for both sticks. Then I can attach these gears onto the craft sticks. And a little superglue will hold the whole thing together. Then I can trim the craft sticks to size and start assembling. This will be how the gears all fit together once I figure out how to attach everything. The central axis will need a small spacer, so I'll widen the hole of the plastic piece and slide it onto the axis stick. Then I can slide the secondary planet gear set on the axis. Then I can install my transition gear that will cause the first planet to connect with the second. You can see that there is too much friction between these wood gears that it snaps the transition gear off the top of the cassette, so I'll take it apart and redo it. You recall that I said this build will never work with the materials that I have on hand. For one thing, there's too much friction between the wooden gears and it jams when I try to spin it from either the bottom or the top. Additionally, my gear sizes don't all mesh together, so I can't reduce gears easily. This is the real flaw in the project. I used the wrong gear size at the base of the second planet, which means that the second planet moves at the same speed as the first planet. There's no rotational difference. This is because my gear sizes don't all work together. This just means that I'll have a third opportunity to build this orrery in about a year and a half, so look forward to that. I'll build a new transition cassette to try to rotate my gears smoothly. We learned from our mistakes here in the endless void of Aaron Does It Wrong, so I'll connect this joint with an old worn out drill bit so that it doesn't come apart like last time. We don't learn efficiently though. This will cause problems in the future, but that's a problem for future Aaron to deal with. I'll insert some craft sticks here because there's too much space in the gears and it wobbles and skips gears. Then, this cassette can be attached to the main body of the orrery. It will just be attached with some super glue. I'll attach an additional brace on top of this gear cassette to prevent it from wobbling. So I'll drill a small hole in this craft stick and thread this drill bit through and glue it to the connecting gear set. Now you can see that the second swing arm hits the drill bit in rotation, so I'll take it all apart again to find a new way to attach everything. Starting with this craft stick glued to the central axis. Now this can be attached to the top of our new extended arm. This will spin the second planet. Now our first transition gear can be glued to that, and this connects everything together. Now I can glue this craft stick onto these gears, which will keep them both together as they spin. Ultimately, I just pulled this drill bit out and used a bit of toothpick to hold the entire thing together, and this will keep the cassette section together while it spins. Now I can work on the base. I have a whole bunch of clock parts from 2 pandemic clocks that I tried to build. They didn't work. I wanted to use this gear as a spinner. I'll start by drilling a hole into the base. I'll also cut out the side of the base so that I can spin the gear with my fingers. I will need to insert a bar into the base for the gear to rest on, so I'll use this small piece of wood. I don't know what type of wood this is. It's not balsa, but I'm able to cut it to size using a flat hobby knife blade. I can just whir the blade back and forth and the wood cuts easily enough. Now I can slot this bar into place, making sure my spinner rests inside the small hole so that the spinner doesn't move around. Then I drill another small hole in the base and slot the orrery into the base. Now I can build the sun and planets from the solar system. I'll use planets from this broken orrery I found, take them off the sprue, give them a little sanding, and they snap together. These planets circle a red sun, so I'll start with a base red and wet blend some orange and yellow onto the top. The habitable planet will start with a yellow ocean. While my base coat's dry, I'll figure out exactly how to attach the orrery. I'll take a wheel from a transforming robot toy and drill out the hole. Then I can superglue it to the base, while also supergluing the wheel to the axis. With my base coat dry, I'll paint some orange continents. My second planet will just be wet blended yellows and oranges, think Mars. Once these are dry, I'll attach them onto the swing arms and the sun onto the axis. Now I'll stain the base to bring it the contrasting colors. As you can see, the planets do spin, but because of the friction problems, I have to spin it by hand from 2 different gear sets. And because I didn't reduce my gears correctly, the inner planets spin at the same rotation as the outer planets, unlike how our solar system works. So join me in about 18 months when I build this again, and in the meantime, please continue to support Casey by subscribing and liking her videos and visiting worldworkings.com. You can also support my whimsy by joining Casey's Patreon. This has been Aaron Does It Wrong.